Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Here also from Hebrews 12, verses 1 to 3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. This is the word of the Lord.
Before I lead us in a word of prayer, I have three quick questions. Okay, first of all, which came first, this church or Trinity Lutheran Church? Some say Trinity, some say this one. It was this one. Okay, second question, in what year did Ingomar Church begin? 1837. It was 1837. So how old is our church? We are 179 years of age. Let's turn to the Lord in prayer. Almighty God, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, creator and preserver of all humanity, the author and perfecter of our faith, we are grateful for this night to be able to come here to be brothers and sisters together, shoulder to shoulder, to be able to talk about the future of our church. 179 years ago, 179 years ago, a group of people, some men, some women, some families, decided that there should be a church in this area to minister to the farmers and their families that were located in this area, and this church began. And this church has strived throughout those years to be faithful to you. They have overcome struggles. They have overcome fights about probably just about anything imaginable, including the cemetery. Yet you have been faithful to us. You have been present in all things, and you have guided us, and those who come before us have listened to your voice and led us in the right path. And so we are grateful for the privilege of now caring for this church, not just the facilities, but this church, its heritage, its people, the people who are here now and the people who will come after us. And so we pray, God, that you would guide us tonight as we sit and as we listen and as we discuss and as we set a course for us into the future. Help us to be open to what you have to say to us. Help us to think that perhaps the people who have been called to lead in the church, perhaps they are hearing your voice. Perhaps they are doing what you are leading us to do. Help us to be mindful of all of those who come to worship on a regular basis. And help us to be mindful of all of those who will come in the future. We are honored to be a part of this church. And we are honored to be able to lead in the positions in which we lead. So place your blessing upon all of us, each and every one of us, at everything that we do tonight. For it is in your name that we pray. Amen. Okay, Dawn Scott, our Leadership Council Chairperson. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, David. What a great turnout. Really invigorating. As David mentioned, my name is Don Scott, and I am Leadership Council Chair. It's my great honor to be here tonight. I want to welcome you once again. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. I think it's just great. I am not going to preach a sermon. That's the good news, right? Instead, I'm going to take you through the agenda real quick. For those of you with great cognitive ability, you'll deduce that we're already in the third bullet, introduction. And we're actually going to give everybody a chance to go around with the microphone. It's something we've done at these meetings before. I think it's real nice and give you all a chance just to say your name. But before we do that, I'm going to go through the rest of the agenda. After introductions, Erica, Trina, and David are going to present, give a presentation on the vision and the future of the church. This presentation they're going to give is going to be very similar to one that they gave to over 40 members of our councils, or our committees rather, about a month ago. And those committee members left very much invigorated, and I can tell you to a person, everybody on Leadership Council left that meeting quite invigorated and quite supportive of moving forward. So I think you're going to really enjoy that. After that presentation, we're going to take some time and tell you about what the next steps look like and how you can get involved in those next steps. And then following that, we're going to have a question and answers, and I'm sure that's going to be great fun, and you're going to bring lots of great questions for us to answer, and we're going to do our best to answer them. And then finally, Bob Boyd, our lay leader, will close us in prayer. So that's the agenda. Before the vision presentation begins, we're going to pass around the mic. I don't know who has that job. And Roland Burnett, as our great luminary, will get us started. We're going to just go with names. We'd love to know your life stories, but with this many people, let's just stick to the names and pass it around. This is, of course, one of these rare opportunities where we get everybody from all our services together. And so you probably heard some names of people you're not real familiar with. So I encourage you, after our final prayer this evening, if you have a few extra moments, try to meet somebody new. Engage in a little bit more fellowship. I will stop blathering and turn it over to David to take us through the vision.
Thank you, Don. From the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 16, verse 13. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" And they replied, "Some say John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." It's one of my favorite passages of Scripture. I love that word, prevail. Prevail means to be greater in strength or influence. It means to triumph or win a victory. It means to become or to be effective. It means to succeed. It means to win out. When I think of greatness, I think of churches that can prevail. When you think of greatness in a church, what runs through your mind? Huge buildings that are bursting at the seams, large facilities that are busy all the time, packed events like this one tonight, parking lots that are filled and people are searching for places to park? Or do you define greatness by using terms like serving and mission, faithfulness and generosity, obedience and changed lives, and a clear sense that God is working in this place? When I think of greatness, I think of churches that are able to prevail. In July of 2013, about 2 weeks before I went into a spin health-wise, several of us gathered at Roland's home, and we came up with this phrase, I dream of a church. I dream of a church where people of every age can't wait to get to worship on Sunday, where people become closer to God, where they develop and deepen their personal relationships with God every day, where new people come and find God and they find hope and their lives are changed, where people are focused on what others need more than their own needs. Prevailing churches, great churches, start with a clear understanding of their mission, their vision, and their purpose. The purpose of Ingomar Church is to reach people with the good news of Jesus Christ and together become fully devoted followers of Christ. We believe that life is better when Jesus is at the center. Therefore, we exist to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. Prevailing churches, great churches, have solid operating practices that they repeat and they review and they follow consistently. And we have followed such practices. We believe that we follow these core practices, that we can achieve all that God has in store for us by following these 5 practices: by welcoming and inviting with Christ-centered love, by worshiping with genuine focus on Jesus Christ, by learning and growing in faith and relationships as modeled by Christ, by serving others as Jesus calls us to serve, and by giving with Christ-centered generosity. Great churches leverage their strengths so that they can move forward. Our strengths are that we have a healthy and stable to growing worship attendance, that we have strong and vibrant worship experiences, that we have a vibrant youth ministry, that would be grades 6 to 12, and that we have a growing and increasingly effective children's ministry, which would include birth through grade 5, that we have active processes and successes and potential in radical hospitality, and that we have strong and stable staff and a stable staff structure. I like to say we have the right people in the right seats on the bus. Great churches experience great results. They have great stories to tell, and they tell those stories to their people over and over again to show them that we are on the right track together.
Church wasn't something that I would look forward to, and it wasn't a joyful experience. I still consider myself religious. I would pray, but I got to the point where I didn't feel like I needed to be in church, and that kind of carried on up until really through the time we got married and started having kids, and that's whenever everything started to change.
I didn't go to church in high school and college. We didn't get married in a church, and then when we started bringing our kids to the daycare here, the newsletter would come home in the little backpacks, and then when we went to the preschool, the newsletter would come home in the backpacks. One week I said, you know what, I'm reading the newsletter. I said, we're gonna go this Sunday. We're just gonna show up. I don't know what it's gonna be like, but we're just gonna go. And from the minute we walked in, we were met with open arms, literally and figuratively, by the Watkins family. Oh, come sit with us, come hang out, we're so glad you're here. And that was the beginning of it all. The message that day was about welcoming people into the church and hospitality, and I felt like they were talking to us, and it was just really cool. And every experience since then, I mean, we walked out of there thinking, I can't wait to go next Sunday. And I've never had that feeling. And we're excited to go to church. We can't wait to come back.
Our kids they started it all for us. Whenever they were enrolled over at ICEC, and he would just be learning even how to talk at that point in time, and he would make motions for us to stop eating because we didn't pray. We forgot to pray. And whatever he would mumble, it worked. And it's just the energy and the innocence that they bring to it all is just had a tremendous impact on our growth as a family.
We started getting more and more involved, and our kids got more and more excited every week, and which was contagious, and we got more excited and more involved.
Whenever they get called up to the front before they go to Faith Place, and you can almost see them running in place, can't wait to get to class. And they are speed walking down the aisle and then giving thumbs up or okay or trying to high five me on the way to go see Miss Danielle. That's the joy I didn't remember having as a kid.
Just recently, we became new members. It was an all-day celebration. I mean, it just felt, I can't remember ever feeling so excited to be a part of something.
Just knowing once again that we're on the right track. We're setting the foundation for them with the help of the entire church. The enthusiasm that they bring to it all, it makes us not want to miss a week. The curiosity that they have makes us be more curious. It just feels real.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the right place to be.
We can't imagine being anywhere else.
How many of you saw that before? Excellent. You know, great churches don't rest on their laurels, and they don't lament on what they once were. They aren't satisfied with where they are. They hear God speaking to them, inviting and encouraging them to grow and change and increase their impact upon the world around them. They know that if you aren't growing, then you're dying. And they know that if you are growing, then you are changing. Great churches aren't afraid of change. We believe God is leading us to grow and change, particularly in what happens on Sunday morning. We believe that one of the things that we can change to impact how we reach other people is to adjust what we do on Sunday mornings. And we believe that the time for us to do that is now. We believe that now is the time because we are coming from a place of strength. We have the right staff. We have the right people. We are in the right circumstances. We believe that our world needs it, that people need Jesus, and we are as convinced about that now as ever. We believe that God is leading us to do that, and we believe that we don't have forever. And so in order to become the church that God wants us to be, in order to live out the dream, we need to build on our strengths, what we have, and who we are. We need to use strengths and then apply them so that we have the potential to change in order to fulfill our dreams, those dreams that I read to you earlier, those dreams that appear on the front page of that document, where people of every age can't wait to get to worship on Sunday, where people become closer to God and they deepen their relationships with God, where people come and they find God and they find hope and their lives are changed, where people are focused on what others need more than their own needs. We believe we are being called by God to reestablish and affirm our commitment in two specific areas. One is in the area of worship, and the second one is in the area of faith development. We believe that we are being called to deliver outstanding, engaging, passionate worship services of two types, contemporary and traditional, and then to increase the potential for spiritual and numerical growth. And we believe we are being called to focus on faith development, to deepen spiritual growth of our people of all ages, through Sunday school and through small groups, and to strengthen our ministry to children and young families through Sunday school as well. Remember, all 5 practices are necessary for us to operate smoothly as a great church, as a prevailing church. But right now, we need to zero in on these 2 areas of worship and faith development. You see that all five practices are listed there, but worship, 2 choices of worship styles, contemporary and traditional, with engaged participants, full spaces, and spiritual energy, and faith development, opportunity for learning and relationships through group study. Trina is going to take us to the next steps.
Sundays? See, the pastors aren't the only ones.
Never happens to me.
Never happens to me. Hello. Sorry. I'm going to talk about passionate worship, and it's most passionate when you remember to turn your mic on. So So what do we mean by passionate worship? We defined this pretty specifically when we wrote our 2012 strategic plan. We talked about passionate worship being to actively and personally engage in worship experiences that honor God and refresh our spirits and transform lives. We talked about providing profound and intimate worship in various styles, worship that would enable people to connect with God and with others, and that would support all of the other ministries by what was being experienced in worship. So what does that look like as we move forward? We believe that God uses worship to do these things: to transform lives, to heal wounded souls, to renew hope, to shape decisions, to provoke change, to inspire compassion, and to bind people to one another. One of the things we want to do in the future of our worship services is that we want them to be authentic. What do I mean by authentic? I mean true to us, true to who we are, not trying to be any other church, but true to who Ingomar Church is. We believe, as David says, that we need two distinct styles, contemporary and traditional. We're good at it. We like it. We want people to resonate through those styles of worship. We believe that the future of worship calls us to have good leaders, leaders who are leading and connecting. We've got the right people on the bus right now. We want passionate choral and instrumental ensembles. They're part of that leadership. We want engaging opening worship, engaging so that you grab my heart the minute I walk in, so much so that I want to come back next week and I don't want to be late because I don't want to miss that engaging opening section of worship. We want a keen sense of the Holy Spirit. Have you ever been in church and you felt like you just knew God was in the house? He was in you. You felt him. We want that feeling for every person every Sunday. We want a congregation who's active and not spectating. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to hold your hands up, but it does mean you came today wanting to meet God and that you came ready to give yourself to what was happening, to listen to the prayer, to listen to the hymn, to listen to the message, to take all of that into your heart and have that relationship with God deepen through your worship experience. We want the opportunity for numerical growth. This is wonderful, a full room. We can't be satisfied with a full room. We need fuller rooms. We need more people to know the truth that we know, that Jesus Christ is our Lord and our Savior, and that life really is better with him at the center. And that brings me to the final one, because life is better with Jesus at the center. If you come to worship, your life will be better. Erica's going to talk to us a little bit more now about faith development.
I'm going to talk about faith development as it relates to our children, and I'm going to specifically begin talking about our elementary age children, focusing on Sunday school. So our current situation is that we offer Sunday school at 2 hours, at the 10 o'clock hour and at the 11:15 hour. So the children of our church are split between 2 hours. We have a situation where the children of our church are actually not growing up together. So for example, a couple weeks ago, all of the third graders received their Bibles, but not all of those third graders know one another, right? Because they're split over 2 hours of Sunday school. So through talking with parents and staff and other leaders, there's a consensus that this is not the best situation for our children. And as we've discussed solutions, we keep coming back to the idea of a dedicated Sunday school hour. Now that idea actually seems to be one that seems relatively easy to support, which is good. But you'll see as this presentation goes on that it's actually a very tricky thing when we start talking about the Sunday morning schedule and real times then of services and a Sunday school hour. And quite honestly, one of the ways to simplify that issue would be to make the hour be simultaneous to worship. So to create a situation where the children go off and have their own hour and all the adults go to church. And I need you to know that as we have thought and prayed through this, it is not our desire to create that kind of situation here at Ingomar Church. We feel that there is great value in having our children be part of our worship services. So this idea of simultaneous is something that is not anything that we even want to consider. There's a lot of research actually that shows strong reasons to have the children in worship, not the least of which would be that children who attend worship with their parents as a family are far more likely to remain in the church and in the faith after they have graduated and left the home. And this is the kind of situation we want to set up for our young ones. So children worshiping in church services with their parents, that's the conclusion that we have come to. So with that being said, I'd like to paint a picture of what that hour could look like, what that dedicated Sunday school hour could look like, specifically looking at our pre-K to 5th grade ages. The easiest way to picture this would be to picture Vacation Bible School. Many of you have been involved in VBS in one way or another. VBS has what you would call a large group, small group format. So all the kids start out together in the sanctuary. It's craziness, it's mayhem, and there's worship, and it's loud, and it's fun and engaging. And then they break off into age-appropriate groups where they travel through stations and things like that. So we're considering an hour that would look like that, where children begin together in a large group, they have worship, they have a lesson, and then they break into groups that are age-specific, that are led by caring youth and adult leaders that take them through discussion and life application, and then they return back to the large group, and from there, they're dismissed to go back with their parents. That's what the hour could look like. So something I really want to highlight here is that small group element of that hour. The vision that we have for this is that these groups would be led by caring youth and adults that are committed to investing in the lives of these children. A key element of this is that there is a consistency in those leaders week to week to week. It's not someone different every week, but it is a consistent leader that is pouring into the lives of the kids. So I'm not sure if this is going to work. Do we have the internet? We have the internet. Okay, so to give you a real life example of how this could go, I'd like to show you a brief video from a church that uses this model, so we can, just see the potential impact of this model of Sunday school.
My name is Claire. I am 17 and I am a senior in high school. I've been attending this church since I was 1, and I love Wombaland and Upstreet and Inside Out. My favorite part of Upstreet was definitely my small group leader. Her name was Miss Brittany, and she was just absolutely amazing. I was always clinging to my parents. I never wanted to leave, and she always talked me down, and she was always like, it's okay, we're gonna have fun here today. I loved her because she was so pretty, and she always listened, and she always cared, and she was just the one that I looked up to. When I was 11 years old, my family adopted a 14-year-old girl from Kazakhstan. I had always wanted a sister, a playmate, and a friend. It was a dream come true. When she got here, it was hard. She didn't speak a lot of English. She didn't know a lot about the culture. There was a lot of tension that we had to battle out. She was independent, and so coming and having a family and having somebody telling her what to do was difficult. We didn't have a past to go on, but despite everything, we were still really close. We would stay up until 3 or 4 in the morning talking about boys and makeup and hair. When my sister got older, I saw that she was becoming more and more independent. Now she was like 18 at the time. She was ready to be an adult. She decided to become her own person, and she left our family. And it was the first time anybody in my life had ever left me. I was angry and confused, and I remembered Miss Brittany saying things like, God's always there, and I can do all things through him who gives me strength, and that's what got me through. That's what made me decide to become an Upstreet leader. I want to be a Miss Brittany for my kids. I want them to feel comfortable here and feel safe. I love dancing with them in worship because worship was always my favorite part. I get them to dance with me and, they just lose themselves. I love that they're there and they're so energetic. They make me laugh and smile, and it pulls me through the week. I can have the worst week ever and I feel like I can't go on. Then I see them and they're so happy and they're so sweet, and we just have a good time. You don't know what their life is like at home, but they may need you. All you need to know is that you need to be there. You need to be there for these kids every week, and that is the most important thing. Even though my sister never came back, Miss Brittany's words really pulled me through, and I don't think she realized the impact she had on me, but she changed me just by being there every Sunday. She changed me.
So you can see from the video the tremendous impact that the leader had on the young girl, and you can see the value in having consistent leaders who are invested in the lives of the children. So, that's a cool video, and we can get something out of it, but it's somebody else's church, it's somebody else's experience, so I just want us to just envision what that could look like here at Ingomar Church. Let's have a little real-life picture of what it could look like here at Ingomar. So, maybe. There we go. All right. Let's use some of our own kids. So this is Nora Mountain, born and raised here at Ingomar Church. 4 years old. Yeah. And that's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich stuck to her forehead. Okay. All right. Full of life, full of energy, born and raised at Ingomar. 4 years old. This is Josie Petrick. All right. Same. Born and raised here at Ingomar Church. 13 years old, also full of life and energy. All right. So let's fast forward 4 years. Nora is 8. Josie is 17, and Josie serves on Sunday mornings as Nora's small group leader. She knows everything about Nora. She knows her likes and her dislikes. She knows what sports she plays. She knows who her friends are. She knows what kind of music she likes to listen to. She knows what boys she thinks are cute. She knows everything about Nora, all right? And that is her job, to show up every week and to invest in her life. Now, consider the impact that this experience has on both of these girls. On Josie as she serves, and on Nora as someone pours into her life week after week, communicating worth and value and love to her. Because there are many benefits to this model, and the potential for spiritual growth here is significant. Again, for both sides. And I'm using a youth as an example, just that happened to be the video that we showed, but clearly with adults serving, same idea. The potential for spiritual growth on both sides is huge, because we know that small groups work, we know that life is better together, and we know that the most significant life change in young people happens in the context of small groups rather than large groups. Large group experiences are important, but that deep inner significant life change happens more in that small group setting. And we know as adults that part of the way that God grows us up on the inside spiritually is through serving other people. And so this is like a win-win, right, for everybody involved, for the one being served and the one who is serving. The potential for spiritual growth on both sides is significant. So we really wanted to take time and consider the potential positive impact of this dedicated Sunday school hour and why it's so important as we move ahead and start to talk about Sunday morning worship times and our Sunday morning experience. But it's not just all about the kids, so Trina is going to talk to you about what this hour could look like for adults.
So as Erica said, there's a lot of potential that we have for adults, and adults learn. We believe on Sundays and during weekday and weeknight small groups, and that both of those things are important. And what we'd like to do is really reinvigorate both of those things. It said, Erica actually quoted something to me the other day that said, relationships grow better in circles than in rows. So you're all sitting in rows today like you do in church, but when you come into a small group experience, there is so much that can happen in your life. So what we really want to do is we want to help people to connect in relationships. We want to have curriculum that helps us apply our faith to our lives, to our financial situations, to our marriages, to our parenting, to anything that's going on in our lives. We want to make sure that we've got curriculum and offerings that help support that. We believe that in small groups you develop lifelong spiritual practices. So in your small group, you're reading scripture and you're praying, and you begin to do those things on your own if you weren't already doing that. So it's something that helps us, again, to lead us into becoming fully devoted followers of Jesus. So again, we're talking about both Sunday school and weekday evening small groups. What we want to do is remove any barriers for people to attend. Right now, I know of a couple in our church who have 2 children. Their children go to Sunday school. Their children go to Kids on the Rock. This couple do not go to Sunday school, not because they don't want to, but because one of them has to be late to class or leave early from class in order to pick up the kids. Usually both of them if the kids are in 2 different places. And they didn't like that. They didn't like having to come in late. They didn't like having to go early, so they go to Starbucks and get coffee instead. All right, there's another couple in our church who are new. They're new and they were looking for a small group, but weeknights are hard for them. They've got kids, they've got to juggle babysitters and homework and bath time and bedtime. And Sundays didn't have enough offerings for them that didn't conflict with their worship time. So they're not in a group. There are other people for whom getting to church on a weekday is hard. Maybe they're older and they have mobility issues, and Sunday, getting here once a week is all they can do. Maybe it's a transportation issue. It could be that their work schedule doesn't allow them to do anything during the week. It's just too compact. It could be that they live far away. We've got people who live so far away, they drive here for 40 minutes or so on a Sunday, and it's hard for them to get back during the week. So what we want to make sure we're doing is removing those barriers, providing the curriculum that really works for people, and making sure we've got some on-ramps. There's always something open for you. It doesn't have to be in a semester or at a specific start point, but if you came today, you could find a group that you could plug into tomorrow, okay? Whether you're new to the church or just new to being in a group. That's what we're looking for. So, that leads us to, what do we want to see happening on Sunday morning? We want a dedicated Sunday school hour. We want more engaging and growing traditional worship experiences. We use the term often, even better. We think they're great, they can always be even better. We want to continue the energy and growth of our contemporary worship experience. Again, even better. We want more congregational interaction and connection with each other and with our pastors. We want more time for the Holy Spirit to work. Right now, the way that our worship schedule works, all of our services are bumped up against each other. We're on a very tight time constraint. The worship planning team spends hours, minute by minute, planning those times so that we don't go a minute over. And we'd like time to to allow God to come in and go, you know what? That prayer needs to be a little bit longer today. or we need to sing another verse of that hymn because people were just feeling it. We need that time for the Holy Spirit to work. And that, we believe, will lead to a deeper spiritual growth of our congregation. So we've considered a lot of options. We've talked about this. Leadership Council has wrestled with this for probably about 2 years. We've prayed over it. We've lost sleep over it. We've storyboarded it. We've done all kinds of things to try to figure out what to do. And we've come up with a couple of conclusions. One is it's important for us to act now. For all of the reasons that David said earlier, we believe that God is calling us and we can't stop and make it perfect, but we can act now. So since it's not perfect, it's a phased approach. There's a piece we can implement in February while we're working on some longer-term changes. And some of those longer-term solutions might include building renovations or other things that just take more time that we don't have right now, so we can be exploring those while we're working toward some first step changes in February. So David and Dawn are going to tell you what those changes are. This is where we get the drum roll, right?
I can go.
Dawn needs a mic.
Hello.
You ready for this secret? Why do I feel like I have your attention? By the way, let me tell you, you are the most attentive church I have ever served. You listen to every word in every service. I love being in front of you. I could be here all night. Our intent, that is me, the people up front here, and the leadership of Ingomar Church, is that this will be our new Sunday morning schedule as of February 1st, 2017. First of all, there would be a traditional service that would occur at 8:30 on Sunday morning. And it would be over at 9:30 or thereabouts. 8:30 worship, traditional service on Sunday morning. The second thing that would happen in that day is that at 9:45 to 10:45, there would be a dedicated Sunday school hour, 9:45 to 10:45. We've gone the gamut of lots of things, and it's hard for parents to get their kids into the classes. We don't have the luxury of everybody being right down the hall. We have people who are across the street, so it takes time. So we need to allow time for parents and people to get to their classes. So that service would end at 9:30, and then they would have 15 minutes to get to their Sunday school class, and then the Sunday school class would end at 10:45 on Sunday. And then at 11 o'clock, we would have a contemporary service in Fellowship Hall in this particular space. And at 11 o'clock, we would have a traditional service in the sanctuary at the same time. We've talked about this an awful lot. We've wrestled with this. We've exhausted our conversation on this, and we can't seem to reach a place where we cannot have 3 viable worship services on Sunday morning because we do. We have, in our season now, we will have 200, 210, 220 people that will come to the worship service at 9 o'clock, and we're hoping that they will easily transition to 8:30. At 10 o'clock, we just about fill this room. We have at least 175 people on a consistent basis in this room. We have extra chairs set up for tonight. We often set up extra chairs for that worship service. At the 11:15 service on Sunday morning, we have average 150 people throughout the year. Now, some of us would go, and that's a lot. That's 150 people doesn't seem like very many people in a 500-seat sanctuary. But 150 people is larger than most churches in the Western Pennsylvania Conference of the United Methodist Church, and that's only one service that we're doing. So we didn't feel like we could say, pick a service. You decide, but we're taking away this service. Now, what will be a little bit of the stress of that? Downstairs we'll hear upstairs. Upstairs we'll hear downstairs a little bit. Will that be uncomfortable? Maybe, but it might also be exciting to know that not just where you are worshiping, if you're in one of those services, but in another service, there are people worshiping at the same time. So that's what we got.
And we'll certainly have questions and answers to time a little bit later to answer all the questions that you might have. I just wanted to say on behalf of Leadership Council, as Trina and David I think both mentioned, this had been discussed for 2 years, not months, not weeks, 2 years, trying to come up with a schedule that we thought best met this vision. So Leadership Council did vote unanimously, recognizing that some of these changes might be inconvenient for some, but fully supporting this schedule as presented to you here today, and really to fulfill two things: to maximize the number of people that we can lead to Jesus, and while deepening our existing relationships with Christ. So next we'd like to talk about how we're going to get from where we are today to what we see up on the board. And to talk about that a little bit in work teams is Trina.
For those of you who don't know, my title is Director of Strategic Implementation, which is a big mouthful, but it means getting things done. So that's why I get to be in charge of the work teams. So we've set up some work teams, and in a few minutes when we finish here, you'll have the opportunity to sign up for those, and we have a handout we're gonna give you that describes them a little bit better. But essentially, each work team will have a staff liaison and 1 or 2 congregational leaders. They have a specific scope of work, which I have written with the help of all of the staff here based on their on which area it is. And they have a really tight timeline just through October, the month of October, to answer all of the questions in that scope of work. There'll be some times for them to cross-link and touch base with each other because a lot of their work will intersect. And then at the end of October, they will email a final report and recommendations to Leadership Council, and that will be evaluated, and we'll start to work on implementing this plan for February. So what these work teams are, there's one for Kids Sunday School, so that's birth to grade 5. Youth Sunday School is grades 6 to 12. Adult Sunday School and small groups, so how those things intersect. Traditional and contemporary worship, that's kind of a big team. We were going to split that into 2, but we needed them to be really working together because of the simultaneous nature and some of the other things that overlap. Facilities short term, so where are things going to be, what kinds of furnishings might we need, what are the impacts on our HVAC system, those kinds of things. And then facilities long term. As I mentioned, they're simultaneous to looking at what we're going to do in February is looking what the next step is after that. And so a lot of that has to do with our facilities, and there'll be a team working on that. So what we encourage you to do is think about being on one of those teams. There are other ways that you can help. If you can't be on a work team, we can use some staff team care and support. So even just some help with things in the month of October while those staff and team leaders are working on those teams. Are there things that you can do to support them? Certainly working with our prayer team and being a part of prayer is very essential, and we want to be surrounding this entire process with prayer. And Ken Rippon and the prayer team have already started to do that. Communication, if you can help with communications throughout this process, and research and analysis is just, as some of these groups say, hey, did we look at this? Do we have this information? If you're a person who likes to delve deeper into some of that stuff, we've got most of it. We just might need you to help look through it. So those are things that wouldn't involve being on a work team, but could, if you have some individual areas where you can support, that would be really great. I know that everybody approaches change differently, and we hope that as you're hearing all of this and you're digesting, that these are the things that you will keep in mind. We certainly want these to be kept in mind, the mindset of the people on the teams. Think beyond what's best for you personally. Keep the mission of the church in mind. That's why we spent so much time tonight talking about that. Keeping our overall desires for Sunday morning in mind, what we want to see happening. Think about the people who are yet to come, And think about the others who are here, who aren't you, and aren't your immediate family. And then think about the possibilities for growth, the spiritual growth and the numerical growth of this church. Just keeping all of those things in mind as we approach change, I hope will help some people who feel restless or unsettled to really deal with that. So at this point in time, we are going to pass out the handouts, and I've got some people who are writing things on these boards, and so and we're going to set up our Q&A. Okay, and so we're going to kind of do all of that, and you can take a little breather. If you have a question, there's going to be 2 mics, one in each aisle, so just come up to the mic and ask your question. The 4 of us are going to be up here ready to answer. And then following our prayer, head over to one of the sign-up sheets and just write your name on there if you're interested in being a part of one of the teams, okay? So make sure you get a handout. This handout is about the work teams and gives you a little more detail. And there'll be more detail at each station as well.
All right, we're going to launch into some questions and answers. Up on the overhead, you see a little bit of guidance on the types of questions we're looking for. Certainly, we'll take any questions. One set of questions, though, that you might be asking us is how we might do X and how we might be able to accomplish Y. And many of those questions we don't yet have answers to. And it's going to be up to those work teams that Trina just described to figure out what those answers are. But nonetheless, we will certainly listen to all your questions. And with a smile, we will answer them. Whoever would like to get up first, I like this. This is good behavior modeling right here. I don't think it is either.
Okay, so rumors have been going around for a long time, and I just wanted to start by saying I'm very impressed. I think it's a wonderful suggestion for what you're trying to achieve. I did want to know what the reasoning behind moving the 9 o'clock all the way to 8:30 was, as opposed to 8:45 and leaving the 11:15 at 11:15, maybe a little less shock for the 9 o'clock service. And I'm not in the 9 o'clock service, so.
Well, one of the things that we believe that it's better for people to do church on the hour, and then on the half hour, and then on the 45 or the 15. Okay, no, that's true. There's some research that supports that. So, I don't want to use that research word as kind of like my crutch, but there is a lot of research that supports that kind of thing. And we wanted that. We really had hoped to move the 11 o'clock service to 11. That's true. The one thing I have wrestled with since I walked in the door was really worship at 11:15. You don't see what I see. I see people who get up and leave at noon. They leave at noon. They just walk out. We think that we ought to be able to do worship in an hour, and we should be able to do worship from 11 to 12. We also did not want to start the contemporary service after 11 o'clock. And since everybody was moving, we felt like it was okay to move the 9 o'clock people to 8:30. 15 minutes is a lot, and half an hour is a lot, but it was all part of believing that everybody kind of goes through it together, and everybody undergoes change, and nobody gets exactly what they want, but still, everybody's happy. Or not.
Next question? We're done.
The one thing I do not understand is what are you going to do with the children that attend a traditional service? Right now, they attend part of the service and they go out to Sunday school. With this program, it sounds like the only thing that they're going to have is a Sunday school between the two services. So I need that explained. And then the concern I have is changing the contemporary service by a whole hour. I think I don't attend it, so I wish some of the people that do attend it would express their concerns, if any. We're all people who have it. We're used to going to church at 10 o'clock. We have other things that we do, particularly for these young families. They're probably going out with the kids in the afternoon or stuff. Pushing them way back until 12 o'clock getting out of service may mean we lose some people from the 10 o'clock service. I would kind of suggest maybe what we need is phase 0+, which is keep the contemporary service at the same time as the Sunday school. The kids can still go to that class if they want to. But I'd like to hear some other people's concerns about what happens to the kids when they're in adult church and the inconvenience, particularly in a 10 o'clock service.
Well, Bill, thanks. Let me address that, and then if there's anything you guys need to add. Thank you for asking that question. Those are two really, really good questions. First of all, we are not planning to eliminate the opportunity for children to leave the worship service. An hour is still an hour, no matter what's happening, if you're 3 years old, if you're 4 years old, if you're 6 years old. That's a long time to sit still in church. And we will continue to have the opportunity for children to leave all 3 services at a particular time in the service and go and have a special lesson that's prepared for them. And for some of our children, that's the only thing they will get. So we want to make sure that we continue to provide that. But we also want to make sure that we give all children, the opportunity to attend Sunday school. And that's the driving phrase here, the opportunity for all children to have access to Sunday school. Your second question had to do with?
Contemporary at 10, starting an hour later at 11.
Yeah.
Can I take a little bit of that?
Sure.
I'll just start off by saying, thanks for the question. You did identify the service that's going to have to change the most, go from a whole hour, 10 o'clock to 11. The one advantage they'll be gaining, of course, is that their Sunday school will now start an hour before approximately the time when contemporary worship used to start. So if we look at our calendar, about 15 minutes earlier than they're used to getting here will be at the time their Sunday school starts. So yes, that might create, again, I think, as I stated when we were discussing, this schedule creates inconveniences for just about every one of us. But hopefully, just by looking at that as a switch of when you go to service versus when you go to Sunday school, that inconvenience isn't too great most of the time.
And
Bill,
I mean,
if we keep 10 o'clock at 10 o'clock, then they're on top of Sunday school. So they're not able to attend Sunday school. They either attend Sunday school or worship. They will get that little bit of what happens at the end of the service, what we are now calling Kids Place, but they won't have the opportunity to have the Sunday school experience. And again, as I want to restate, that's what's driving much of this change, is making sure that we have that dedicated Sunday school hour for our children.
Okay, for the
and for
children,
adults,
but you're
too.
also saying then, for the adults, there will be no option for Sunday school on Sunday mornings other than the Sunday school hour,
Right.
right.
okay?
That's
Well,
right.
now, it's
Yeah.
not quite accurate, because actually it's possible that some renegade small group may decide that they're all going to meet at 9 o'clock because they all go to the 11 o'clock service, so they may decide to do that, if they would really want to do that. We wouldn't be saying that's absolutely forbidden, but yeah, we're thinking that what happens on Sunday morning here in these facilities would be happening for the most part from 9:45 to 10:45.
That just raises one more question then, okay?
You only
If
get
everybody's
three-
going to
you
Sunday
only get
school
three-
class at the
You
same...
only get 3, Bill.
Okay. I'm taking my last...
Go for it.
The last question is, if that's going to happen, do we have enough classrooms for everybody at that hour?
That's what our
That's-
facilities short-term is looking at.
Yes, that's one of the how questions that the work group is going to have to tackle. And it's not an easy question to answer, and that's why we need a team of dedicated, smart people. And hopefully
They're
you're all
here in the
thinking
room.
about signing up. to help us figure that out. This mic.
Okay, you're good.
Why-
You're good. You don't have
Okay.
And, and everybody can repeat their name again before they ask the
Okay.
question, unless you don't want to be anonymous.
No. I'm Jeanette Kaur, and I'm a member of the choir. And I just wanted you to know I'm on board. I think it's a great idea to try something new. And I really am enthused about it. It really does make me, if I'm singing in two choirs, when they have the orchestra, have to get up earlier. But I'm willing to try. And I think it's great that you've spent 2 years working through this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Can I
you,
ask
you only have 9 more comments.
one last question? And this is just because I'm curious. How are you going to preach in 2 services? And that makes me curious.
Well, I think
It's a how question.
Pardon me?
We got to figure it out with work groups.
That's actually one of the things on the worship work team is how do we handle preaching? We've got a couple of ideas, but we really want the work team to wrestle with that. So we hope that again, some smart people will be on there helping us figure that out.
I would have said more. That's all right.
More people like her.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Clive, and I am just curious. I think this is cool. I guess I'm welcome for change. I'm curious about what plans there possibly could be for a location enhancement of the contemporary service, because we are quite full. And if we want to grow, I feel like there's not a lot of room for us to do that.
Yes.
So that's my question.
Another great question.
You want to take it?
Welcome. You're welcome.
Sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a facilities work team question, right? Because it's for space. So there are short-term things to consider, and then there are long-term things to consider. So I'm not trying to pass off your question, but I don't have all the answers to that, except for that, as Trina presented, that the first phase would be to begin in February 2017. So in February 2017, that service would remain in this space as it is, and then we'll hear what wisdom the work teams, both short-term and long-term, have about where we go in the future. It's a really good question. Deep thinker.
I think, Jonathan, there were lots of issues that we felt like needed to be resolved, and we couldn't resolve all of them. Not without more help, not without more time, not without more possibilities. Mm-hmm. So that was the one that's still burning.
Yeah.
Doug?
I'm Doug Taylor, and I'm a trustee, so part of this is a facilities question, but also very supportive of the idea of a dedicated Sunday school, which I've wished for the last few years. And I don't have to remind anybody who's been here for more than a few years that that's what we used to have in the first place. And speaking as a member of the men's Sunday school class, it was far more vibrant when there wasn't the draw of a simultaneous worship service, so I completely support that. I'm wondering though, am I missing something about the concern for the number of rooms? Because it seems to me that what you're saying is you're going to take X number of kids or an X number of adults who are doing Sunday school currently at 10, and you're going to add Y number of kids or Y number of adults who are currently doing the same class at 11, and you're going to put them together. And unless we have a huge increase, which I know it would be the long-term goal, but I don't anticipate that immediately we're going to have more than X plus Y, that they would fit in the same room. And so you need no more rooms, you just need more chairs in rooms. Unless I'm hearing, and I wasn't sure, Erica, in this small groups idea, would there be more than one classroom of second graders, or more than one classroom of senior high kids, or more than one room of men's Sunday school class?
Thanks for that question. Of course, it came from an engineer, right?
Yeah, Erica's got
Go ahead.
Sure. Well, in relation to the children's hour, the ideal thing there is that there's actually a large room big enough for that large group. And then when they break into small groups, they would not necessarily be breaking into other rooms, other classrooms, but just into small groups within that large room. So it requires a large room, but not necessarily more rooms in addition to that, if that makes sense.
Right, and so some of those rooms that are currently being divided up and used for kids' Sunday school could very well be used for adult Sunday school. So we do feel like it's a little bit of a juggling, but space should be ample for the Sunday school hour.
Hi, I'm Nate Mountain. Hi, Dan. Dick. I was really touched by the segment of the video that spoke of the format for the children from birth to 5th grade. Mm-hmm. I don't even have a child in birth to 5th grade. Yet. And I'm wondering, I guess I have two questions. One, is there a possibility, or are we anticipating that format seriously, and will that be incorporated in phase 1? And my second question is, phase 1, February, do we have an idea about phase 2, timeline-wise?
Good question. So the Kids Sunday School work team is looking at what we would need to do to implement that model in February. And so the goal is to try to implement that model. If that work team comes up with some obstacles that it needs to be pushed a little bit longer or whatever, then that would happen. As for when the next phase is, again, some of the work team charges are to look at some of those, what happens next, what happens when Together at 10 outgrows this space and we haven't gotten to a longer term solution yet. And so that's a piece of that. So I don't know that we have a date for phase 2, but part of that is seeing how it goes and being nimble enough to move toward it.
One of the worship work team goals is to come up with a new name for Together at 10. Okay, so you start thinking about that when you go home tonight.
Jeremy?
Hi, Jeremy Hartzell. My question is on the research and thoughts of having children age 2 through whatever in church for 2.5 hours, essentially, by the time you get them here at 9:30 to be in Sunday school at 9:45, and if you're going to the contemporary service, leaving at noon, it's 2.5 hours of trying to keep their attention, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, it's actually not for families that are already operating under the model of 2 hours on a Sunday morning, as in they attend a worship service and they attend Sunday school. It's not that different. So for sure, a challenge for our children's workers and teachers to keep their attention. So I'm not minimizing that, but it's the same amount of time in scheduled programming as they currently have if they're attending worship and going. It's just with that buffer time in between to allow for travel and socializing. But I think that's a really valid question and something that the children's team should wrestle with. Yeah, go ahead.
Because my question is more so, we go to 10 and our kids go to Sunday school at 10. And I know there's a lot of people that do that. So for us, it's expanding the hours for those kids by an hour and a half.
Right, yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, to that, I would just say I would love for you to give it a go, like to give it a shot of coming and you and Colleen being in a class and the kids being in a class as well, and then attend worship and see how that works for you. And if you can settle into that routine, I think there'd be a lot of benefit on both sides, so it'd be worth giving it a try. Yeah.
My kids went to service here when we went to church and they went to Sunday school. That was back when, I don't even remember the times anymore. But so I remember when my son was 5 and we were at a funeral and we were doing communion. And he looked at me and he said, "What are they doing?" And I realized my son's never been in church. He's been in Sunday school all these years, and he didn't even know what communion was. And it broke my heart, and I was so happy when this church went to two separate. So I know I went through that because I had, I think they were in middle school, one of them was in middle school at the time when we did switch, and they hated it. It's not fair that I have to come for 2 hours after, it was a huge deal, but it became, this is non-negotiable, this is what we're doing, and it was a habit, and it was lovely. It was wonderful.
And just remember how much fun Sunday school is going to become with the new model.
Can't wait to
Ginny?
get there.
Okay, well, I'm Jenny Haggis. That's one of the things I wanted to say. Anyone who's been around here during Vacation Bible School knows what kind of enthusiasm goes on, and to have that on a Sunday morning will be terrific. But my question is, what about the youth that you cannot do without to run the Sunday school program that way? When do they worship and have Sunday school with Jim Mountain, which we certainly aren't going to give up? And so consequently, I hope that you're taking into consideration when the confirmation class is going to meet, when the senior school Sunday school class will meet, all of those things, because you can't expect those kids to do everything on Sunday mornings. It's coming at 8:30 for a traditional service. They're not going to do that. They want the contemporary service. And so I just hope that that's all worked out.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually on the work that the youth team is working on. So if you have input into that, that's the team you want to be on, is the youth Sunday school team.
I wanted to add to that a little bit. This is Diana Clive. I was, I think, 15 or 16 when I started teaching Sunday school at my small Maine rural church, and I felt that I lost a lot because I no longer had a Sunday school for myself. So I was concerned when I first heard that the model that you were looking at had the older high school students teaching the younger kids. At Root, it works gorgeous. The big program, I think that's fantastic. But I do worry about not having a Sunday school for the high school age.
It is our intent that all youth will have the ability to worship and learn and serve. And I think I can speak for Megan, who's back there, to say she's almost demanding that. So, I mean, it's pretty much a requirement. So if you are serving on a Sunday morning and you're a youth, you will be in some learning opportunity, whether it's on a Sunday morning or another, small group. But we are trying to figure that out. But I do believe that we feel that's really, really, really important.
Hi, I'm Todd Purnell. So I just had a question about the work teams, right? Because others were asking questions, and then you guys would say, well, this is something that the work teams are thinking about. And my question is, I'm very involved in many different aspects of the church, right? Like leadership, praise band. My question is that you have different teams. Would people be able to be on different teams, or is it that you pick one team? Because it says at the top, pick your team. So is it you pick one team and that's kind of like your team, or is it you can be part of different teams?
Yeah, I feel like if you have the capacity and the time to be on more than one team, put your name on every single paper you feel compelled to do. I mean, the more heads, the better. So do it. You don't need to pick one. Yeah. If you have input into more than one, put your name up there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, I got to raise the mic a little bit. Chris Proctor. I'm the facilitator of one of the teams, so feel free to sign up. My question is, with the Sunday morning schedule, that seems like it's going to be a logistical nightmare for special events like Christmas and Easter, and even in the summer whenever there's supposed to be an outdoor worship. I wonder how those are being looked at with the new schedule.
Yeah, we started to talk a little bit about outdoor worship. We haven't settled on that. haven't talked specifically about holidays, but I think that that's something we're capturing, just so you know, we're capturing notes. Nilda is fastly typing up here. So I think that's a good question. We need to put that together for a work team to consider. What happens on holidays? Christmas Eve is pretty much separate anyway. I mean, we run that schedule a little separately. So yeah, we add more services anyway.
Hello. Question about parking spaces. If we're combining two services and have a total of 375 potential on average, how's the parking situation going to work out?
Short-term team, you're on it. That's exactly one of the things they're looking at. Where can we park? Yes. Yeah, I don't have the answer.
I don't really have a problem parking. When I get here at 7,
yeah.
I don't have any problem. And when I leave at 1 or 12:30, there are no cars anywhere. So I don't see it. But we have, you should know, we have 200 spaces basically on this side of the street, plus some handicap spaces, and 50 spaces on the other side. They used to use a figure of 1 car for 2 people. I think it's more like 1.5 cars for 2 people now, something like that. But I do know that there are times when the Streets family, when we were all living together, would each have their own car here. It is going to be a challenge, and we have we hope that we can reach some short-term solutions and then think bigger as we have to wrestle with that. We do really experience a lot of that anyway because our services bump up against each other. Like the people are still at 9 when the people come at 10, and the people are still at 10 when the people come at 11, and so forth. So oftentimes I go home and my wife says, I had the park clear down by the paper recycler, especially because she comes at the last minute because she has Erica's kids. Sorry.
So one of the things that I was wondering about is, because we're planning to have the individual hour completely devoted to Sunday school, would there be opportunities to have sort of like big VBS style Sunday school-esque things going on involving this space or the sanctuary, because those spaces would supposedly be open?
Those are all things that we want to consider. So it's a good suggestion.
So that's the kids' Sunday school team looking at that. So if you want to weigh in, put your name over there.
I'm starting to detect a trend in your answers.
If you guys, I'm sorry, yeah. I mean, it's true. We don't have it all figured out. That's why we're here tonight. That's why we have these work teams, because we need help figuring all of these things out. And if you want to know specifically what each team is looking at, there are scopes of work. There are 2 printed out for each one item that you can look at. They're 5 pages long. It's a 5-page long scope of work with that explains what they're looking at. So if you are interested in specifically more details about a team, feel free to look at that tonight, or contact me and we can connect you with that.
A lot of great questions. Really appreciate the involvement. Is there anybody dying to get out one more question? All right. This is number 4.
Actually, this is not a question, but an observation. It happened to me last Sunday, okay? I was crossing the street to go to the men's Bible study at 11 o'clock. I was approaching the street. The police officer was out there in the crosswalk on the yellow line, hand up. Lady drove right straight through. Okay? We also, a number of years ago, had a guy killed out here, and I think that was before we got the police out there. But that is a safety concern that we should be also looking at. If there's going to be more traffic going across the street as a result of this change, and even if we aren't, people, if you're going to cross that, make sure the cars are stopped before you enter the crosswalk, even if the cop is there trying to stop the traffic.
Thank you.
Great suggestion.
We actually witnessed that and drove by the crosswalk probably about 15 seconds beforehand. and it was the sun, it was very hard to see the cop. And I think that's what was one of the reasons one of the factors. But I did have a question, though. At the 11 o'clock services with the kids zones or the
Kids' place.
the kids' places, are they going to be combined and then divided up at the end to make sure they go to the right place? Or are they going to stay separate?
Oh, we sent your kid back to the wrong worship service.
I'm just gonna put We're actually hoping Drew goes to
Get some other family.
We're going to put a C or a T on each child as they come in.
That's a very good question. Yeah, something to be considered in that, how to best handle that. I don't have the answer to that, but we would definitely make sure if they're combined, the children get back to their scheduled service. Really good question, though. Thank you.
Chuck, are you coming to ask a question? Yes. All right.
It has to do with these work teams. Do we have to make up our mind while we're sitting here tonight, or can we?
Good question. No, you don't. If
Okay.
you go away and I think probably I should have put my email address on that piece of paper, but you can call the church office and give them your name, and I will call you back or connect you with the right person for the work team. So and that's another thing that we will, I don't know if Dawn's supposed to tell you this or I am, but this is being recorded. So if there are people here who weren't here tonight, or if there's something that we said that you want to listen to again or watch again, that will be posted probably end of day Monday or Tuesday morning by the time we get the recording up and the slide deck and the handouts. All of that will be available on the church website. So if you go to the homepage of the church website, there'll be a link if you scroll down to the All Church Meeting page, and you can click there for more information. And that will also have a place where you can sign up if you haven't done so.
I'm sensing a desire to pray by everybody in the room, so I'm going to invite Bob Boyd up, who's our lay leader, to lead us in a closing prayer. Afterwards, you're welcome to stick around a little bit. The four of us will certainly be around for a little bit. And then I wish you the safest of travels home, and thank you once again for attending. Bob?
I just have to say, before we pray, there's been a tremendous amount of work put in, and I'd like to hear it for these presenters and the leadership group that did it. Really, really a tremendous amount. If we could bow our heads, please. Heavenly Father, we have so much to be thankful for. Our church has been here for us in times of sorrow and sadness. It has been here to share our joys and greatest happiness. It has provided a sanctuary of peace and understanding during times of doubt and questioning. Our church has been there waiting with open arms regardless of past misdeeds or misthoughts. Our church has provided us with outstanding leadership, providing both ever-improving worship as well as loving pastoral care. It has provided us the opportunity to serve you in so many ways, from providing wells and water in African nations to supplying our troops overseas with much-needed necessities delivered with prayers and love. We are now in the process of change so as to serve you better. It is our fervent prayer that you provide the wisdom and guidance to our church leaders, the work teams, the staff, and the congregation so that we may make decisions that will best serve you and will ultimately bring more people to Christ, whether they are our children, currently unchurched neighbors, or current members of the congregation that are seeking a closer relationship with you. I pray that you watch over each and every person in this sanctuary tonight and enable each and every one of us to love one another as we have been taught by your Son, Jesus. Amen.